This is a third part of the healthcare technology maintenance management, and this part will talk about the following points: service contracts, quality assurance, and preventive maintenance, service quality, and finally we'll talk about the software and medical devices on the network. We have four types or options concerning the service contracts. We have the manufacturer service contract, which is the most expensive type. We have the second type or option will be the third party or independent service organization service contract. The third type is maintenance insurance, and the last one will be the hospital clinical engineering service, which will be the least expensive type. Usually we have a mixture of these four types in a hospital. The percentage for each type will be different, depend on the size of the hospital. If it's a small or medium range or large range, if it's a medical center or even a system of hospitals. Now we'll start with the manufacturer service contract. Usually expensive and high technology equipment will be covered under such type of service contracts. This is considered or typically considered a high profit center for medical equipment companies. The such type of contracts will have exclusions. This may include the high priced part. For example, in case we have an MRI machine, have a CT scanner, usually the X-ray tube sometimes will be excluded from the service agreement. Because the cost of such part will be very expensive. Usually, for example, in case of 32 slice CT scanner X-ray tube, the cost will be around $75,000. Also, other exclusions include the user error, waiting time, and building environmental issues such as the electrical power. The reason to sign such type of contracts will be, for example, this type of contract will be the best or the only options if parts, expertise, documentation, and essential service tools are not available. So this could be one of the reasons behind such type of service contract. A second reason pushed strongly by some clinical departments is the requirement for very long downtime. This is another reason for having such type of service contracts. There are many types of this or subtypes of this service contracts. We have the platinum or the full service agreement. We have also the silver and gold. We have different scenarios. For example, we have type of manufacturer service contracts, which will covers only parts or cover only labor or for PM only, and other creative solutions also available. Here in this slide, we can see in this chart the percentage of the equipment that covered under the manufacturer service contract. For example, in imaging or laboratory, around 50% of the equipment could be covered or under such type of agreement or service contract. And we can see also the sterilizers, anesthesia machine, ventilators, dialysis machine, and so on. The second type of service contract will be the third party or the independent service organization service contract. Sometimes it's better to have more than one choice in order to have cost-effective solution concerning the maintenance cost for a clinical engineering department. In this case, a third party will be a good alternative in this case. The service contracts have to be managed like any service activity. Have the vendor representative check in and check out, leave a service reports, verify the work which is done or performed by the vendor, attend routine and ad hoc meetings, finally enforce the contract terms, example the response times. Usually in a computerized equipment management systems, we have a module which is the contract module to manage such type of contracts. The third type will be the maintenance insurance, where an insurance policy covers maintenance, labors, and parts. The maintenance vendor can be determined by the user, which is the clinical department head or administrator, or could be determined by the clinical engineering department itself. Choices will be either the manufacturer service, which is the most expensive type, or the in-house clinical engineering department or third party. The last type of the service contract will be the hospital clinical engineering service, and this option is considered as the least expensive type of service contracts. The saving could reach 40%. But this option requires skilled, educated staff, not only a formal training, but a specialized training and skill in the area of troubleshooting, excellent communication, and political know-how, and over understanding of clinical issues will also be needed. Uh, Vendor partner, even in the case of the hospital clinical engineering service, a good partnership with the vendor is needed. Uh, in order, the clinical engineering and the vendor need to have a good relation, need to gain the respect of each other, understand each party's motives, agree that you want to work together, identify what responsibilities are, and meet the commitments, establish a problem resolution method, and finally try a win-win result. So try to make this relation beneficial for both sides, for the hospital and the manufacturer. Here we can see a comparison between the different types of contracts. As we said, the manufacturer service will be the most expensive type, but sometimes we need to sign such type of service contract in case we need a very low downtime of the machines, or in the case of we lack the resources to perform this type of task. Also, the hospital and clinical is considered the least type of expensive, least expensive type of service contract. However, even in the case of the hospital clinical engineering service, we need to have a good relation or partnership with the manufacturer. And we have other alternatives. As we said before, we should have a mixture between them. So the best practice will be to have or the most cost-effective program need to have a mix between these different types. As we said, this will be decide based on the size of the hospital and the size of the medical equipment in the asset inventory or in the preventive maintenance program. So we need to have a mixture. The type of the percentage of each one will be decided based on what type of equipments, as we can see in the previous slides. For example, if the equipment in concerning the radiology department or laboratory department, renal dialysis department, and so on. Also, another point which should be considered is the type of the equipment available in our inventory, because this will become more beneficial to reduce the number of the equipment under a manufacturer service contract. This is an example for a service agreement between a hospital and a manufacturer. Now we will move to another and essential point in the maintenance management program, which is the maintenance management part, which will be the quality assurance and the preventive maintenance. The philosophy of maintenance has changed based on the level of technology, and we will demonstrate this through a practical example, which will be the ventilator. So preventive maintenance provided by the Biomedical Engineering Department or Clinical Engineering Department has changed over the years. For example, in the 1970s, there was a great concern about electrical safety as well as analog and mechanical devices getting out of calibration. For this, we need to perform a lot of PM preventive maintenance and more frequency inspections, focusing on the electrical safety and calibrating. This is due to this problem, which is the electrical safety and analog and mechanical devices. However, nowadays or today, frequent inspection and preventive maintenance and safety performance is not required as before due to the following reasons. Firstly, the devices are much more reliable due to high density digital electronics and self-mount techniques. For example, now we use high speed analog to digital converters such as the sigma to delta ADC. Also, we use, instead of the pass-through technology, we use the self-mount techniques, and most of the processing nowadays are performed in the digital domain and not in the analog domain. Secondly, nearly all the devices today currently have self-test and self-calibration features. Whereas in the 1970s, most of the devices, the self-test the tests were done manually, and also the calibration done manually prior to use of this medical device on a patient, such as the case of the ventilator. Also, the realization that a rigid high-frequency inspection schedule does not yield a high reliability. Few devices require the true preventive maintenance with non-durable parts replacement. Most equipment failures are random. At the same time, the number of devices have increased significantly, which means if we want to perform the preventive maintenance and the performance and safety inspection, this needs a large number of staff or biomedical technicians and clinical engineers department, which will be expensive a little bit. Finally, PM inspection programs as a part of supportive service to a hospital is expected to run a lean program. Okay, so these points are behind the reason to minimize the number or the number of the safety and performance testing as well as the preventive maintenance. So now quality assurance testing is a subset of the maintenance management program. To demonstrate the talk about the change in the philosophy of the performing the quality assurance and the preventive maintenance, we'll take the ventilator as an example. For example, as we can see here, these ventilators are manufactured by Siemens. The first generation was called Servo SV900C. As we can see here, we have a lot of gauges and a lot of knobs. This ventilator should be self-tested and should be manually tested and calibrated prior to use in the patient. And the second generation, part of this task are become automated. In the latest generation, which is the Servo U and Servo On, All of these tasks now are done automatically. And also the technology here were analog based, whereas most of the technology here are digital based. Another point is a type of the pass-through electronic boards which was used in such generation, and we can see a bulky size for the ventilator, whereas the new generations are self-mounted with a small size and more reliable than previous one, and doesn't need to make the test and the calibration of of this ventilator manually as done before. We will watch two videos, one for the first generation and one for the third generation, in order to understand the change in this technology and how this change has impacted the philosophy of maintenance, where most of the devices now doesn't need to perform IPM, which is the inspection and preventive maintenance. This is the first generation, where the test and the calibration were done manually. We have a lot of potentiometers. I did one of the preventive maintenance for such device, for such ventilator. It takes a lot of time for you. It should be done manually before the use of this ventilator on a patient. So we have a maintenance kit. We perform this test and calibration prior to use of this ventilator on a patient. As we can see, we have analog and mechanical parts which need to be calibrated manually. This is the third generation, which doesn't need a lot
For
of
many
IPM.
years, mechanical ventilation has been about
This is
providing
second,
life support.
first generation,
But we've seen
third
in
generation.
recent years that ventilation can be so much more. We know that your choice of ventilation therapy can impact patient outcome. Unfortunately, this has also made ventilation increasingly complex. You need to interpret patient data and to act accordingly. It requires your time and training, but the ICU is a complex area with lots of devices that compete for your attention, and time is limited. That's why we wanted to create a ventilator that requires a minimal amount of training to use. A ventilator that empowers you at bedside every step of the way. The Servo U is all touch, and the screen helps you focus on the important things while keeping functions not often used out of your way. Menu takes you directly to what you need, carefully visualizing what you are doing. More importantly, the decision support you get during ventilation has never been more intuitive. On-screen tutorials are available to help you choose between ventilation modes. Servo U reminds you of things to do and even provides recommendations of possible actions to perform. And when you adjust settings, illustrations help visualize the effects of those changes. We also made some interactions potentially safer by requiring more from you when changing certain settings. Studying clinicians at work has taught us that successful ventilation therapy involves the whole team. It's about you being able to utilize the full potential of the ventilator. Adapting the tidal volume to the patient's lung is one example. Servo U automatically calculates milliliter per kilogram of predicted body weight, supporting the ARDS-NET strategy. It is measured and trended over time, helping you make informed decisions. And if needed, trends are easily shared with your colleagues. The ease of interaction is not limited to the screen alone. Every detail is carefully designed, making the ventilator flexible and easy to use. any side becomes the patient side. Even the internal aspects are designed with remarkable precision, so that maintenance can access the machine for easy service.
So as we can see from the previous videos, the technology, the type of technology has changed the philosophy of the maintenance. As we said, now we need less IPMs or inspection and preventive maintenance because the technology is now more reliable. Also, the intervention from the user as well as the biomedical engineers and the biomedical technicians has been minimized. Also, another point which also help in the minimizing of the need to perform such IPM is the movement from the preventive maintenance into the predictive maintenance, which means we have a gathering of data on a daily basis from the medical devices, and we have software which analyze the need to intervene and also determine the time where should this type of intervention be done. Now we'll move to the third point in the maintenance management, which is the service quality. Another name for the service quality is the maintenance matrix. An important part of any maintenance and biomedical engineering support program is gauging the quality of the services. For equipment, some measures are used, such as equipment uptime or time available for full use, which is the opposite of the downtime, device failure rates, repair turnaround time, PM inspection completion according to the schedule, repairs, re-repairs, and so on. These are considered as a performance indicator for a healthcare technology maintenance program. So this is a part of the service quality. In addition to these measures, we have also an important method, which will be the customer satisfaction survey, where some questions will be asked. For example, the ease of making the service request, the response time and repair time, the courtesy and professionalism, communication, documentation, quality of the work, and so on. Now we'll move to the last point in the healthcare technology maintenance management, which will be the software and medical devices on the network. New responsibilities will be included for the healthcare technology manager. These responsibilities range from loading a software updates via a firmware IC exchange. So in case we have a new software updates, this can be done using an IC. So we replace an IC on an electronic board instead of connecting to a direct computer or laptop. Media transfer of software to medical device systems, ensuring connections to standardized digital output are correct, such as DICOM, HL7, which health level 7, and so on. Monitoring medical networks, and finally, network interfacing to put devices on the system, the hospital information system. A final point which is very important now, which will be the medical device cyber security, and this should be considered in the healthcare technology maintenance management program because medical device cyber security is an exponentially expanding issue due to the connection of the devices with the patient's health information and the criticality of medical devices for diagnosis, treatment, and monitoring. Finally,